In 2018, the Saturday before Christmas, I was out on a birthday bar crawl in the Lower East Side. We were all getting a bit bored with the crowd and decided to go back to one of our friends' apartment to take a breather, listen to some music, and decide what to move on to next. Cut to me realizing that I had 10 missed calls from various members of my family. My uncle had been rushed to the hospital and didn't make it. My uncle was the youngest of my mom's siblings and was more like an older teenage brother to me than an uncle. We grew up together in a very close family. I don't think I realized how quickly grief hits when you get news like that. The sound of my father's voice cracking and straining to get the words, "he didn't make it," out of his mouth was more than I could handle. I crumbled into a pile of tears right in the middle of the kitchen. In a daze, I made my way back up to Harlem, trying to pull myself together and figure out what to do. I couldn't get anyone in the city on the phone. I couldn't get myself to call anyone in my family, so I needed to suck it up and get home that night. Mission accomplished. Flight changed, bags packed with the help of my neighbor, and a couple Klonopin to get me the hell home. All of this to get to the point of this story, and I'm barely able to keep myself together as I wait on the subway platform. The change of ticket and my lack of savings wouldn't allow for a taxi ride to the airport. Just as I feel like I'm about to completely break down again, I noticed a man in lightly colored, absolutely beautiful suit. He had blonde bobbing curls on top and shortly buzzed on the side. I turned to take a bit more notice, and then I saw his face. It was strange to say, but I can't recall anything about it now. It's a blank space in very detailed memory. The only thing I can remember about his appearance was that it absolutely took my breath away. It wasn't an "OMG, this man is so sexy" kind of way. It was sheer admiration for the absolutely perfect and symmetrical face. So here we are, the only two people waiting at the stop on 145th. The man seems to be almost giddy with joy, as if he was seeing the world for the very first time. Not a crazed, forced happiness. He seemed as genuine as a child in Disney World, seeing the Magic Kingdom for the first time. When we boarded the subway, he sat mirrored to me. I was in the far left seat, and he on the opposite side of the train to the right. It was quite crowded, but I looked up at some point before the 125th stop to see that he was staring directly at me. It wasn't scary, it was as if he was waiting for me to finally notice him. All he did was look me in the eyes, nod his head in confirmation, and wink at me. It gives me chills to remember it. The comfort that washed over me felt like a warm embrace. I felt the security of a child who had scraped their knee. That feeling of mom making it all better. I was able to get myself home, head held high, and without the help of the Klonopin. I'm not a religious person. I have scuffed about God, and I've been resentful when anyone brings up their beliefs. I don't know how to explain it, but I have this deep feeling that I saw an angel that day, all alone and navigating through intense emotions. I truly feel this man was sent to give me the comfort and strength to get home. It almost feels embarrassing to type that out, but I have no other explanation. I'm a 14-year-old girl, and I have seen some strange monsters after waking up. I call them entities. And there are good entities called spirits, and bad entities called demons. And no, I can move during these visits, so it's not sleep paralysis. The first was a demon called Natasha, which was actually a ghost of a dead girl. After that, there was a spirit that I named Belle, and I saw even more spirits. But for every spirit, there was 2 demons. First, I called it a demon if I felt uneasy around them, but not only do they creep me out and scare me, they also tend to hurt me. The first demon, only demons touch me, that actually physically touched me was a girl who looked like she was right out of The Ring, that I named Tamura after the BNHA villain, who would sit on my chest and hold my arms down. Then it was a large yellow demon that I named Ghastly, after the Pokemon who would lick my face. Then it was a creature that I can only describe as completely Vanta Black venom, with a tail that I named Minoru after the perverted BNHA character, because of what he would do to me, which I won't say, but it was very bad. And the newest demon that I named Akumu, after the Japanese kanji for nightmare. I never actually saw Akumu's face. I just know that he is vaguely human-like, and that he doesn't only appear in real life, but also in my dreams. He tells me that I'm sleeping, and then murders me, causing me to wake up. But the only time he showed up in real life, he ran his hand over my belly and was about to strangle me, like he does in my dream, but he disappeared after my blinds, which had a rip in them, had sunlight shine through it, and he just decayed like something from BNHA. I know he's still around in my dreams, because not too long ago, he told me, "Even when you're awake, I'm still here." And I just haven't been okay since that. I'll keep you all updated on what happens next. Let me start off by saying this. In my whole 24 years of life, I have never been on a train. Roller coaster? Most definitely. But an actual train? No way. From the time I was little, when my grandma and mom would take me to Six Flags St. Louis in the summer, I was beyond exhausted by the time I got there, simply from the sleeplessness and night tossing and turning from pure excitement of what I got to do the next day. But I always did what every kid does between the age of 7 to 12. I had a blast at the park. Then I was asleep as soon as I hopped in the backseat of the truck when we left, not to wake up until we pulled into the driveway. Anyways, I was never scared of roller coasters, not even the ones with the loop. I was always the one leading whoever was with us down the long path of line you'd have to go through to get up to the ride, one by one and coaster after coaster. I always knew that usually about halfway through our visit, I would be too much of a chicken for a certain ride that still to this day, I've never had the balls to get on. The goddamn train that takes you around the park. That's right, the damn choo-choo train. Why? I cannot tell you for the life of me a single reason, or even possibly as to why the hell I am so terrified of trains. Now fast forward around a decade to the time, and I'm 20 years old. I live in a small town in southeast Missouri, and my mom lives in the house right next door. Every so often, I'd go next door and watch TV with her and my baby sister if I got bored. She also finally came to terms with the fact that I smoke weed, and when my sister is visiting my grandparents across town, I'll sometimes go and share it with my mom. But this time in particular, it was all three of us. I'm laying on the couch, my sister is at her princess table in the corner playing with something, and my mom just came in from the kitchen with plates of taco salad that she had whipped up for us. She sits down, and I randomly had it on that show, I Used to Be Alive. If that's not the name of it, I apologize, but please do correct me if you know the show I'm talking about. About 15 minutes into it after she sits down, she says this. "This reminds me of what you told me when you were about 3 years old." Thinking that she was talking to my sister, I turned my head from the TV, and she was looking at me. I said, "Huh?" She then went on to tell me that when I was 3 years old, I randomly started talking about my other family. Apparently, from what she told me and my two sisters, my mom, aunt, and our cat were all headed somewhere and were killed after our train crashed. At first, I was like, ha ha ha, that's hilarious, thinking she was messing with me. But then she swore to God that I had randomly said that when I was 3 years old. In that moment, something made sense that I've never in my life been able to find reasoning for. My fear of trains. Could someone help me with this? Could she be serious? I'll be 25 this year and I still think about this pretty often. Really, it freaks me out. Something weird happens in my house every day. Unopened wine bottles open, The metal door of the boiler container slams on the ground even if it was perfectly sealed. Chairs falling out of the blue. We learned to live with these events because they started happening 5 months ago. I also have a 6-month-old dog that lives in the house's garden. When he was a puppy, sometimes he would start crying after staring at something that just wasn't there. Now he's grown up, and he still sees something, but he doesn't cry anymore. When he sees it, he tries to get me in the house and barks at me if I try to go outside. He wants me to stay in the house. Then he goes where he saw the something and stays there for like 5 to 10 minutes. Then he comes back and lets me know that it's all safe and that I can go outside now. I've never seen what he does in that 10 minutes because as soon as he hears me going outside the house, he comes back to get me in. The other day, my father went outside the house and saw a bucket full of water. He used that bucket 1 hour earlier and it didn't rain, so there was no explanation for the water. He stared at that bucket for like 2 seconds and then it literally exploded in front of him. He also told me that he always has this weird feeling when he goes into the bathroom at night. He feels like someone is watching him. Only my father has this strange feeling, and the weird stuff only happens in front of him. We moved into this house 9 months ago. I don't know where else to post this, so please let me know if this isn't the right spot. I just wanted to get this off my chest. I firmly believe that my best friend visited me on her birthday. In January 2011, my childhood best friend passed away. Her name was Carla, and we were super close growing up. I would often sleep over at her house. We would rent movies from the shop around the corner of her house. We sort of lost touch when I moved to a city 400 miles away, but would still communicate. After she passed away, I remember that I did not have dreams for almost 2 weeks. Then one of my closest friends told me about a dream they had with her. Carla appeared to my friend in a dream they had never met before, and asked my friend where I was. She was looking for me. Then, like clockwork the following night, I had a dream with her in it. I was in her old neighborhood, and it was bright and sunny, and I could barely see the cars and houses. But then from around the corner, Carla comes walking toward me and she's smiling super big. She doesn't say anything, but just gives me a big hug. I don't remember what happened, but I think I woke up shortly thereafter. I forgot to mention that before the dream that night, I was watching a movie and eating in my room when my nightlight started to flicker and eventually turn off. I thought, no big deal, I'll just go get a new bulb. After I woke up from the dream, my nightlight turned on. I don't know what this means, but I felt her there. Fast forward to this year, I read recently about how lost loved ones tend to visit us during special times like birthdays or anniversaries of their death. We just have to see it, I guess. So I started talking to Carla more often than normal and thanking her for everything she'd done for me, since her birthday was coming up, March the 3rd. On March 1st, I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I thought to grab my phone so I could listen to my podcasts. When I walked into my living room, I got a huge whiff of Carla's house. It was unmistakable. You know when certain people's homes just have that smell? Not necessarily bad, but it is a certain scent. I smelled her. I couldn't believe it. I almost cried. But I acknowledged her presence and said thank you for visiting me. On the morning of March 3rd, her birthday, around 5 a.m., my boyfriend and I got woken up to the sound of something small that fell, coming from the kitchen. He got up to investigate, thinking maybe our cats dropped something. He found out it was a little wall sign that we have in the kitchen that says, "I love you more than bacon." It's been there for almost a year. Call it a coincidence or whatever you want, but I have no doubt in my mind. I just wanted to share this. I used to live in southern Illinois with my grandma, aunt, and cousin. My aunt was a rebellious teenager and liked to explore abandoned houses, since where we lived was mainly farmland. so yeah, there were a lot of those. One night, my aunt and her friends went into the abandoned house and found a chest that had really old china in it. So they convinced my grandma to take them back to the house to retrieve the chest. Needless to say, they took my cousin and I. I had an uneasy feeling the entire way. When we got to the house, my aunt and her friends got out of the car and headed toward the house while my grandma, myself, and my cousin waited in the car. I kept my eyes on the house, and up in the top middle window, out of nowhere, appeared a pair of bright red eyes. My cousin started crying and hid under the floorboard. I yelled and pointed it out to my grandmother, and she yelled and called my aunt and her friends back. No one lived in that house. The stairs to that house didn't even exist anymore. I drove by that house earlier this year, and it's barely even standing anymore. All that's left is the chimney and barn, surrounded by trees. This all happened when I was about 5 years old, and I'll never forget it. Here's a little backstory on how it all started. When I was a young teen, my mom bought her first home. We renovated it a lot, tearing down walls and floors. I thought it would be a great idea to capture everything as a reminder of our first home. I never looked at the pictures after I took them. As time went on, the renovation finished and my camera was full of reno pictures, and many personal pictures too. My mom developed the pictures and I went through them afterwards. In one specific picture of a doorway covered with plastic, you can see the picture of a man's face. He looks like he's pulling the plastic over his face while screaming. You can see everything. The mouth, nose, eyes, even the head shape. I immediately told my mom, and she told me she had seen it, but she didn't want to scare me. Nothing was ever done about it, and nothing ever happened. Fast forward a few years, and I was going on a trip to Mexico with my grandmother. At this time, I was 16 years old. I remember one day my grandma told me she was going to run errands with a couple of family members. I was told to go in my aunt's car, and she would take me to the house while we waited for her to finish her errands. My aunt said there wasn't enough room in her car, and I was forced to go with my grandma. Once we got there, she asked me if I wanted to go in with her, and I said no. I was going to wait, but she insisted that I go with her, so I did. Once we walked into the building, all I saw was a man sitting in a room surrounded by chairs. We sat, and my family told him their concerns. I thought we had finished when he closed his eyes and then looked at me. He said, "I see dark spots all around you. I just walked through your home. There's a picture of a man in front of a closet." I lost it. I had never told anyone beside my mom. I was so scared. He said he was there for me, that I needed an exorcism. He drew something around me with some kind of liquid and then lit it on fire. The flame was intense and scary, but that was it, or at least all that I can remember. He gave me instructions on how to finish the exorcism at home, but I never did. After that, my life changed and horrible things happened to me. I saw, heard, and felt horrible things. I just need advice. So what should I do now? I'm 23 now. I live in Madagascar, that island on the east of Africa. A lot of people here still believe in magic, sorcery, and all that stuff, despite being a big Christian country. My dad died in 2002, and he lived and experienced a lot of things in his life. He was a Christian and didn't believe in witchcraft or magic stuff, although he experienced a very strange thing back in the 80s. My mom and an aunt did confirm that story. In 1985, before I was even born, my dad caught pneumonia and was rushed to the hospital. My mom and an aunt were there to look after him, buying medicine, etc. My uncle, that aunt's husband, knew things about black magic and traditional Malagasy witchcraft. When he once visited my dad on the 4th or 5th day in the hospital, he told me something. He gave him a piece of ginger and asked him to keep it in his hand for the next 2 days. My dad asked why, and my uncle told him that on the next 2 days an evil person who wanted to hurt him, or even worse, will come and visit him in the hospital room. And holding that piece of ginger would keep the evil person away. My dad didn't believe a single word of what he said, but Mom insisted to do it because she knew my uncle was really serious about it. So my dad kept the ginger in his hand for 2 days. The very next day, while he and my mom were in the room, someone knocked at the door. My mom opened it, and one of my dad's coworkers and friend was there with some flowers. My mom told him to enter, but the guy stayed right there, and then said that finally he wouldn't enter the room. My dad saw him, and again told him to enter, but he was standing in the threshold not moving. And then he turned back and went away quickly, without even saying goodbye. Later, when my dad was back to work, his coworker and friend was no longer working with him, and my dad never saw him again. So that, my dear listeners, was a collection of paranormal encounters from Reddit. Some really interesting stories in that collection, some really bizarre things. That last story being about witchcraft, I think that was the first time I've ever done a witchcraft story on my channel. So, huge thank you to everyone on Reddit that let me read their stories, and a huge thank you to that second story, which was submitted to me through my Reddex page. Thank you to that person, and if you have a story you want to share with me, there is a link in the description that you can click on that will take you straight to the page to submit it. And if you submit your story to me, I promise I'll read it for my channel. All that said, down in the description you will also find sources for every single one of these stories. I source everything down there, and a link to my Facebook, Twitter, and my subreddit, as well as a page where you can submit your story to me. I already said that. I'm not going to say it again. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. If you really liked the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that little bell next to it. And then if you really, really, really like the video, make sure you leave me a comment down there. I would love to hear from you. All that said, friends, I hope you have a fantastic day, a fantastic week. I love every one of you, and I will see you on the next video. But until then, sleep well.